All right, so some of you may know this story, but I'm going to share a story to kind of kick off what is about to happen. Some of you know this, some of you may not, but a long time ago when I was younger than you, I used to do acting, okay, modeling and acting. And there was a certain movie I was trying out for, and this was in San Francisco, and there's a place called Treasure Island in San Francisco. It's right before you get to the Bay Bridge. You turn down the spot, and there's this warehouse, and they have a lot of auditions there for things. So this one time I was auditioning for this movie, my dad took me, and we get into the warehouse, and there's this robot that's right there when you walk in, and he goes like this, "Greetings, Earthling." And me being very immature, I said, "Oh, shut up, you stupid robot." Yes, I said that. And so I don't know why I thought that was funny at all. No idea. But I'm walking my dad. When my dad gets upset, he calls me Maddie. Maddie. And so I was like, "Oh, Dad, it was just a robot," with my high voice at that age. And so we're walking down, me and my dad are walking down this hallway, and this guy comes up in between me and my dad, and he separates us with his arms around us. He goes, "Hey, guys, how you doing?" And we're like, "Hey, doing good." He said, "Hey, I'm the producer of this movie. Just wanted to introduce myself to you guys. Hey, what did you guys think of that robot at the front of the warehouse?" And we were like, "Oh, cool, man. Real life, like, real good." And he goes, "Okay, that's good. That's what we're going for." That was actually Robin Williams. He's in a costume for this movie. And I was like, "Oh." So I get the part of this movie, and I'm on a scene, and there's Robin Williams sitting in front of me, and I wave to him. And he doesn't acknowledge me. He goes, and I was like, he remembered. And I had no idea who I was talking to, and he was right in front of me. Have you guys ever had a moment like that where you didn't realize who you're talking to? Maybe it's someone's voice, and you're like, "Oh, yeah," and you turn around, and it's your mom or your dad, your aunt, uncle, grandma, grandpa. You're like, "Ooh, shouldn't have said that." Or it was a teacher, or it was, have you guys ever had something like that? That's what we're about to see right now. You're going to have these two disciples that are walking on this road to Emmaus, and Jesus is right there next to them, and they don't even realize it. One of the questions I have for you guys is this, how do you know that you're walking with the Lord? How do you know? It's just something to think about. How do you know that you're walking with the Lord? A lot of us think, I remember I thought this when I was your age. I thought I was a Christian because my parents were. I thought I was covered. They got me covered. And when I go to heaven and stand before God, they'll vouch for me. "Oh, that's Matt." Maddie. Then I go to hell. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, that's Matt, and he's good. He's our good boy. He's a Christian because we are. That's what I thought. I thought because my parents are Christians, I'm a Christian. Has anyone ever thought that? Or sometimes like, yeah, of course. I grew up in the church. My parents, they are saints, and I'm good because they got me covered. I'll tell you what, that's not what gets you to heaven. That's not what gets you to heaven. When you stand before God, it's you and God. And you're going to have to give an account of what you did with Jesus Christ. So my question is, what is it that you want to do with Jesus? And two, how do you know you're following him? Is it because a pastor told you are? Is it because you raised your hand one time at a camp? Is it because you said a prayer 3 years ago? Is it because your parents or grandparents, aunt, uncles tell you are, and you're an angel, you're a saint, you're perfect? And we all know that we're not, no matter what they say. But I want you to think, how do you know that Jesus is with you? If he were to walk in this room and sit down in this youth group, would you even recognize him? Would you know what to look for? How do you know truth when you're reading the word? How have you let this impact your life? So we're going to see there are some men right here that have read the scriptures, that have seen what has happened, and still missed it when Jesus was standing right in front of them. So in this series that we're in called Grave Diggers, we're looking at this as if it's a CSI crime scene type investigation where you show up to the grave and there's like caution tape. And I told you, one of my dream jobs, I wanted to be a detective. I wanted to come to work with a coffee. Coffee, a coat with a little badge on my hip, come under the thing back. All right, what do we got? That was a dream, and God had other plans, okay? So now you get to the scene of the crime, and those last 2 weeks we've been looking at it for, okay, what's the backstory that we just showed up to? We heard that there was a guy who died, and he's not in the tomb anymore. Then last week we got to hear from some of the witnesses, some of the first responders to the scene. So we started to interview some of the women that were there. Now we're going to look at some other witnesses that may have heard something about this. So we're trying to investigate this moment of time. Did Christ really raise from the dead? Because if he didn't, then what is it we really believe in? If he did, then you have no choice but to really go all in with this faith and understand that you're going to have to give an account with hearing the gospel message. And if you do not say yes to Jesus today, that means you're saying no right now. And you got to understand that. Every time you're saying no every time you're saying no right now, you're going to say no. And if something were to happen to you today, you have to understand that. So let's take a look at these guys right here. Luke 24, starting in verse 13. Let's talk to the witnesses. Let's get your notebooks out because we got some investigation to do. Let's call in these guys that have a story to tell. It says this in verse 13. Now that same day, so this is what day? The day of the accusation or the claim of a resurrection. This is the day that they said Jesus' body wasn't there. The day that they said that they saw Jesus rise from death. So this is the same day of the resurrection. Now that same day, two of them were on their way to a village called Emmaus, which was about 7 miles from Jerusalem. Together they were discussing everything that had taken place. So they're talking about everything that's happened so far, the death of this guy. And while they were discussing and arguing, Jesus himself came near and began to walk along with them. I want you to remember that part, that he came near. Verse 16. But they were prevented from recognizing him. Then he asked them, what is this dispute that you're having with each other as you're walking? And they stopped walking and looked discouraged. The one man, Cleopas, answered him, are you the only visitor in Jerusalem who doesn't know the things that happen here in these days? What things? He asked them. So they said to him, the things concerning Jesus of Nazareth, who was. So they believe he's what? Dead. Who was a prophet, powerful in action and speech before God and all the people, and how our chief priests and leaders handed him over to be sentenced to death, and they crucified him. But we were hoping that he was the one who was able to redeem Israel. Besides all this, it's the third day since these things happened. Moreover, some women from our group astounded us. They arrived early at the tomb, and when they didn't find his body, they came and reported that they had seen a vision of angels who said he was alive. Some of those who were with us went to the tomb and found it just as the woman had said, but they didn't see him. He said to them, that's Jesus, how foolish you are, and how slow to believe all that the prophets have spoken. Wasn't it necessary for the Messiah to suffer these things and enter into his glory? Then beginning with Moses and all the prophets, he interpreted for them the things concerning himself in all the scriptures. They came near the village where they were going, and he gave the impression that he was going farther. But they urged him, stay with us because it's almost evening, and now the day is almost over. So he went in to stay with them. Let's pause right there for a second. So here you have these two guys. They're debating and talking about this man, Jesus. Now, what they thought Jesus came to do. Does anyone know what they thought Jesus came to do? Anyone? What do you think?
Yeah, I think that they thought, I found it weird. I think that they thought that Jesus came there to, like, do things in that world.
Okay. What do you think, Jayla?
After it, like, they didn't think he was supposed to
Yeah, it was for there. Okay. Yeah. Boom. Micah, what'd you have? You were going to say that? Okay. I do that too. I usually wait till someone says it, and I'm like, that's why I was going to say. I was going to say the same thing. So what they thought was when Jesus came, remember, the Jews, they were under the Roman government, and what they thought the Messiah came to do was to bring war and to conquer the Romans so that they could be set free. And they thought Jesus was the king of this earth in an earthly way, to come and do that. They wanted him to get a golden crown here on earth, but they weren't thinking of the thorny crown that he would inherit and get an eternal crown. They missed it. And so when Jesus died, they thought all hope was over. We're still going to be under oppression. It wasn't the man I thought. This wasn't the way I pictured it. And you know what, guys? We do the same thing with Jesus in our lives, don't we? When things don't go our way, when mom and dad are arguing, sometimes there's a divorce. Sometimes there's a loved one that passes away. Sometimes we don't get the call back for a job. We get disappointed and we blame Christ. We think this isn't what I thought. Some of us went to Christianity and said, this is the answer and it's going to fix all my problems because that's what I believe. And then you say yes to Jesus and life hits and you're like, this, what the heck, God? I'm your chosen one. I'm supposed to be in a bubble. Why are you allowing this to happen to me? My friends make fun of me. I'm getting terrible grades. I didn't make the team. And we start to blame God for everything. Where were you, God, when my parents were arguing? Where were you when my grandpa left? Where were you when my aunt said this to me? Where were you? You guys ever do that where you feel like Jesus lets you down? Does anyone else feel like that? Because I felt like that in my life. I felt like Jesus has let me down. I feel like Jesus wasn't there for me. I felt like that in the past. That's my sinful flesh that thinks that. I think Jesus doesn't think like I do. Guys, thank goodness he doesn't. Thank goodness he's in control and knows things better than me. How many of us have waited in a season and we get to the other side, we're like, oh, this is nice. Aren't you glad sometimes it didn't happen on your timing? I'll tell you what, you guys know what the rapture is? Something we all can't wait for. That's when Jesus comes back for the church and we're, whoo. Aren't you glad for someone like me that he didn't come back a certain amount of years ago because I would be left behind? Aren't you glad that he's patient and he has a timing for things? Some of us want him to come right now. You know, I'd be so excited if the rapture happened while we're sitting here, wouldn't you? But I have someone in my life I'm praying for to come to know Jesus. Do you guys have someone like that in your life? That you want them to know Jesus? Do you understand a life without Jesus is going to be an eternal life apart from him? And so here's some guys that missed what Jesus came to do. And I want you to know Jesus came exactly what he came to do, and it was to set us free eternally. And just because you say yes to Jesus right now does not mean that all your problems in this world are going to go away. I promise you. Because that's actually the opposite of what Jesus promised. Jesus promised us, you will. John 16:33, he says, you will have trials and sorrows. In this world, everyone, you will have trials and sorrows. He tells you you are going to have these things. Did you know that? But you know what's cool about that promise? He says you will have trials and sorrows. But then he says this, but take heart, I've overcome the world. Everything that you've gone through, he's overcame. That's why he came here, as Dane taught a couple weeks ago. He came here in the form of a baby, and he lived his life for 33 years. Why? So he's walked in our shoes, been tempted in the way that we have. He's gone through things that we've gone through. And some of you in here have a hard time believing Jesus has no idea what it's like. If he didn't, guess what you could do? You could pray to him and say, you don't know what it's like to be me. Yes, he does. He's had people abandon him. He's had people beat him up. He's had people make fun of him. He's been killed. He knows what it's like to go through what you've gone through. He's had his close friends leave him. He's had family not believe in him. His brothers did not believe in him until after he rose again and revealed himself to him. But these guys missed it, and Jesus comes near to them. I want you to know Jesus has come near to you each week you've been here because you've heard about him. Jesus comes near to you because he reveals himself through creation. He comes near to you, and it's up to you how much of you really wants to invite him into your conversations every day. As he comes near, you know what these guys did? They let him in. Did they know it was him? No, but Jesus is revealing himself to you every single day. Don't ignore this. And then they're talking, and look at, Jesus says this. Check this out right here in verse 27. Look at this. Verse 27, it says, then beginning with Moses and all the prophets, he interpreted for them the things concerning himself in all the scriptures. What Jesus is doing, he's telling them from the Old Testament all the way to then that he came to fulfill everything that's been taught in the scriptures. That he didn't miss it. He didn't do what he didn't come to do, that he did. He's teaching them the Bible. Guys, when Jesus comes into your life or is revealing himself to you, he will reveal himself through the scriptures. When you let him into your life, he will make himself known through this. That all of this is about Jesus. Do you guys want someone to love you? Do you guys want someone to know you, to accept you, to give you hope in this life? Read this. He will reveal himself to you in here. He will show you that you could be forgiven. He will give you a hope in a world that seems hopeless. This is all about Jesus. He will open your eyes, but watch. He's acting like he's going to go further. It seems like that. And these two guys, these two witnesses that we're talking to, they're like, listen, this guy, he was telling us all these things about Jesus that we missed. Guys, they were reading the Bible and thought they understood it, and they didn't. They were going to church all the time, and they weren't paying attention. Can you guys relate to that? And we wonder why we're still lukewarm, we're stuck, and we're not getting it. It's because we're not paying attention. Don't blame Christ. You got to blame yourself. There's times we go to church and we're like, I didn't like it. I wanted Alexis and Dane to teach and not Matt. Matt's boring. My point is, guys, whoever it is that's teaching, you could get something out of it. The moment you say, oh, the moment you go, oh, worship, oh, I didn't like this. What are you here for? Hopefully you come here to learn about Christ. I'm not the answer. I'll never be your answer. I'll never be your solution. I'm a broken, sinful man that needs Jesus, and I want other people to know that you can have the same hope that I have, and that's found in Jesus Christ. And what they do is they invite Jesus into their home, and I want to ask you, have you done that? Have you invited Jesus into the home in your heart? And guys, I'm not talking about a room in your heart. I'm talking about the whole thing. Jesus doesn't want a room. He wants the whole thing. My wife doesn't want to be a temporary wife where she's my wife on Sundays and Wednesday nights. She wants to be my wife 24/7. Christ wants to be the Savior of your life 24/7 and for all eternity. There's things that you probably want to hold on to in this world, isn't there? Some of you are struggling with things you're not ready to give them up yet because you really like it and you really need it. Guys, what you really need is Jesus. And I'd be failing you if I told you anything different. I remember thinking I could get to Jesus another time. Guys, today's the day where you can be free and know that there's a hope waiting for you. So check this out. This is really cool. It says this in verse 30. They invite him over, so he went in and stayed with them. Verse 30. It was as he reclined at the table with them that he took the bread, blessed and broke it and gave it to them. Then their eyes were open and they recognized him, but he disappeared from their sight. Ooh, that's pretty cool. Can you imagine that? Have you guys ever been eating with someone and they disappeared? I haven't done that. Sometimes we read the Bible and say it's boring. Guys, if you read that, you should be like, what? Imagine if I'm standing here and I just disappear. What would you guys do? Probably some of you wouldn't even care. That's how blinded you are. You guys are probably just going to be on your phone. That was cool. He'll come back soon. Guys, that's not normal. That's not normal. You should read this with excitement. This is crazy. Jesus is at the table and he disappears. And then they say this. They said to each other, this is verse 32. They said to each other, weren't our hearts burning within us while he was talking with us on the road and explaining the scriptures? Guys, does your heart burn for Jesus? When was the last time you were desperate for Jesus? Or are you just comfortable that you rose your hand one time? Are you comfortable that, I got him? Are you comfortable with that? When was the last time that you were desperate for Jesus and growing in your walk with him? Not just to fix problems, but to be the solution that you can rest on for all your days. Verse 33. That very hour they got up and returned to Jerusalem. They found the 11, that's the disciples, and those with them gathered together, who said, the Lord has truly been raised and has appeared to Simon. Then they began to describe what had happened on the road and how he was made known to them in the breaking of bread. Guys, this is really cool. This is how Jesus reveals himself to us today. He draws near. As you're drawing near, you're talking about him. You're trying to figure it out. You have questions. You're debating. You're trying to figure Christianity out. Guys, if you have questions, that's a good thing. Don't be afraid to ask them to your leaders, to your parents, to your grandparents, your aunts, uncles, your pastors. Don't be afraid. It doesn't mean that you're not a Christian. I got questions. It means that you're growing. You want to learn about your faith. You want to know that what you believe in is true. Because I cannot stand there with you in heaven and vouch for you. So you can't just say, Matt said. See it for yourself. Live it. Let this impact your life. So what they did is they allowed him into the conversation. He goes into the house with them. And as they're seeking him still, he reveals himself to them. He will reveal himself to you guys the more you're seeking him and looking for him. Look at this in John 14. John 14, if you guys want to turn one book over to the right, or you could just listen along. It's one book over. John 14, 21. So it's just one book over to the right. This is John, one of the disciples. John 14, 21 says, this is Jesus' words. It says, the one who has my commands and keeps them is the one who loves me. And the one who loves me will be loved by my Father. I will love them and will reveal myself to him. He will reveal himself to you if you're seeking him with your whole heart. You're looking for him. With the faith that you have, you give it to him and watch what he does. Don't think, I'm going to come to Jesus when I give this up. I'll come to Jesus when I know the whole Bible. I'll come to him right now and watch him reveal himself to you. Change your desires. He could do more in 1 second than the world could do in your entire life of being here. And this is cool because not only does he reveal himself to them, is that they believe. Guys, when he reveals himself to you, you'll believe. It'll transform your life. Not just change it where you're going to go back and forth. He'll transform it into a new thing. And it also shows of himself revealing himself to more witnesses to account that the resurrection did happen. So, Lord, thank you for today, giving us a day to be here. Just be with us in small groups, Lord. Help us to engage in good conversation, Lord, and just to learn more about you, for you to reveal yourself to us as we seek you, Lord. And be with the hearts in here that are hard, that just need to say yes to you. I ask for you to soften them and then for them to believe that you died, that you rose again, and that they could be forgiven. Thank you for all that you do, Lord. In your name, amen.